accounts people, we're going to look at time series, a subject that goes across cash and treasury management, budgeting, MDCL, and therefore the synoptic. And we're going to be looking at creating and calculating the trends and seasonal variations. So although you won't need to calculate seasonal variation in the exam, understanding how they're calculated means you understand what they actually mean. And we'll have a look at the graph and some general interpretation, and we're going to use it for predicting sales for the future. So we're using a 3-point moving total. Now what that means is we're going to have a whole year's sales, and we're going to take our first value from the first complete year. So we're going to put that here. And we're just going to add those three together. It's a total, we'll worry about the average later. Now, moving is probably best explained by what happens if it isn't a moving. So if we only did whole years, we'd have to wait until the end of the following year till we've got a number here. So that's just 2 whole year figures, periods 1, 2 and 3 of each year. But my moving one takes that one off and adds the next one. So instead of having to wait until the end of the following year to see what's happening, every time I've got more data in, I can update my trend figures. So I'll take the colouring off, because our next year, or next calculation rather, is going to be, oh, it's a bit dark, there, it's going to be those. So that one was those three, this is those three. We've taken that one off and added the next one. Is a whole year. It's a bit like if you were doing a week, and obviously these are calculated on the news every day. A whole week is Monday to Sunday, but it could be Wednesday to Tuesday, it could be Thursday to Wednesday. It's still the whole 7 days. This is still the whole year's figures to take out any seasonal variations, and it works all the way down until we get our bottom set of figures, and that one will be those three. So we miss the figures here, we haven't got them until the future when the next 4 month figures come in, and we can't do these if we haven't got 2012's figures in. But apart from that, it's add one and subtract one. It's always a whole year, so it's always a comparable figure. Put that one back in. So that's just a total figure. It's a 3-point moving, so we're going to divide that by 3. If it was a 12-month moving total, we divided by 12. If it was a 7-day or 365, divided by 7 or 365. It is literally. That means we can compare this figure to this figure on a graph. This one compared to that doesn't tell us a lot. And all the way down, we'll put that back in just to show the pattern, because that one compares to that, that one compares to that. So let's draw the graph and see what's happening with our business. The variation doesn't go on the graph. We'll have a graph as big as we can on the screen. We don't need the total. We don't need the month, the time periods. That's close to the data we need. We just need to start at the proper origin. And we can actually see now our moving average, our trend, our general sort of smoothed out pattern, and our actual sales figures. So give it a nice title. And we've got spikes above and below, and that's because of the seasonal variation. So every business in the UK has seasonal variations, even the most mundane, not naturally seasonal product. I worked on one long time ago where everybody was on holidays in August, therefore through the post and over the telephone line, about 15% less orders, therefore 15% less production and 15% less materials required. So this is about interpreting what's happening. So this company has a pattern. Certain groups of 4 months are better than others. The start of the year is bad, the middle is better, and in the end's their strong period. And what we don't want to do is get carried away by thinking, oh, look what our sales are doing. We don't really want to be buying materials up here when they're down here. So these spikes down here are the poor below trend groups of 4 months, and these are the good times, and they're in a pattern which we're about to work out, because that's explained by the seasonal variations. So our seasonal variation is actually the sales figure minus the trend. So that's the period 2. Put it back into sight. That's a sort of iffy one. And then our strong time, know what the answers are going to be. Is the third batch of 4 months. It's not quarters, of course, easy to get carried away. And then the time period, the first 4 months of every year, is the bad time. And that's why that's a minus figure. Now, roughly the same pattern occurs all the way down. In the exam, it will be far more precise. This one's a little bit more realistic. And you can see the patterns of minuses and plus figures that explain the above and below points. So the minus 817 is this one here. The biggest one, 700 above, is this one, 700 above the trend line for that time period. We can also see that something's happened here. The decline, the natural decline, so product life cycle, introduction, growth, maturity and decline. All products have that, whether it's coal over 2,000 years or BHS that has now disappeared. People go off products and brand names. Wimpy's disappeared. All sorts of things have disappeared off the high street recently. Maybe Salmonella, maybe one of their rivals gave up. Maybe they started offering deliveries and it temporarily arrested their decline. We don't know. Could be a marketing campaign. That's the value of the marketing campaign. We can work out what should have happened, and it should have gone down here, and that value is the marketing campaign. So we can relate it to real life issues and interpret what's happening. What we're interested in is what's going to happen in the future. Now, I could put a trend line on the computer, but that's a load of rubbish. It's actually done it for the sales, not for the actual trend. It doesn't make any difference because we know the trend is going down here. So that wasn't very useful. I'd probably draw it on a bit of graph paper or print it out on a bit of paper and then use a ruler, have a discussion with bank manager. What else has happened in the business? What else do we know? Now, looking at these numbers, a sensible estimate, we're only interested in the decline from here, not the overall decline, and it works out at about 150 for every 4 months. So if you go from here to here, it's about 150. That means this figure, if we had it, I'm not going to type it in because it would appear on the graph, would be 19,900. But we're interested in this here. So equals 2050 minus the 150, but we're in 25, not 24, so we've got to take the 150 off again. So that's our trend predicted. I think I actually typed an extra 0 in. That's better. And then $19,450, and now we need our seasonal figures. Well, we've got a lot of them here, but they're not quite the same, so we're going to need to work out the average, which is how it would normally be done. So, bit of maths work. We need, that's our first one, it's P2, so we'll put that one in. And then our first P3 is this one. Our first P4 is this one. And we'll start to see the pattern a bit more actually, that the fact that the P1s are always going to be negative. Our second P1 be easy to work like this. That one, not that one or that one, that one. And now it's going to get easier because it's all on the screen. What's that one? That one. That's our next one down. 167. Now we're interested in this one. Sounds like a smaller figure, but this one's a P1. Very rudimentary calculation, but it's how it's done. And then our last figure gives us, so we know that on average we're about 510 below for period 1. There's our figures coming in. We don't want that 0 though, that'll mess up the average. Doesn't always, depend on how the settings on spreadsheets are. And there's no figure there, so that hasn't messed up that average. So that's our good 4 months, that's our iffy one, that's our bad one. Let's put them in. And then we can work out our value. This is what we actually wanted. But we didn't need it to so many decimal places. That would do fine. So we've understood our business by calculating the trend and the seasonal variations, and we've been able to predict what's happening for the next year, so we don't order materials that we don't want, we don't understaff and under order materials as well. And I've got my sales figure for the next year. Any further in the future, the further you go, the less reliable you are, but that's our trends calculated and our seasonal variations dealt with, and a little bit of general interpretation, allowing us to understand and predict the next year. So what will happen to this business? Well, it will decline, we know that, but if you're declining, you're not spending money on capital equipment, you know not to, your suppliers are all fixed, you know how to make stuff. If you can move your resources, whether they're parts of a factory or parts of a cafe or something, to do something else on, you can still make money. You cut your cloth accordingly. This has given us the information to do so. So Sam and Ella may be in a declining business, but they can still make some money.